Yeah, just to sort of introduce myself, my name is Joseph. I'm a director of athlete management here at ASM Scholarships. Basically, I wanted to kind of have this opportunity to speak with you, lovely people, student athletes, parents, counselors, head of sports, all of that kind of thing, just to provide as much guidance and wisdom on this very, very complex, scary, confusing recruitment process to obtain a sports scholarship in the United States. I was born and raised in England, came out on a soccer scholarship, and had a pretty unhealthy recruitment process. And that's ultimately why I got in this industry, and that's ultimately why I'm extremely passionate about working with young, talented student athletes that see the college system for what it really is. And I'm a big believer in what it provides for a person, not just academically, not just athletically, but personally as well. And, how it builds your character and things like that. So, yeah, like I said, my name's Joseph. I came through this process a long, long, long time ago. I've worked with thousands of athletes over the years to sort of place them into the college system. And basically, the company that I represent and work for, along with Michelle, is ASM Scholarships. And we are essentially a sports recruitment agency, a sports recruitment service that acts as the connect the gap between the student athlete who wants to obtain a sports scholarships in the United States and the collegiate coaches. Not everybody knows coaches. Not everybody knows what a coach wants, what they're looking for, the scholarship breakdowns, the timelines, the process, all these different things. I don't expect you to know that. We are a team, a company full of experts and professionals that do know this, and we pour ourselves into it. So our job is to facilitate your entire recruitment process for you, make it simple, make it stress-free, and that kind of thing. We are headquartered here in West Palm Beach, Florida. We have another office in South Africa, another small office in the UK, and then a slightly larger office in Portugal, as well as one other office in Houston, in Texas as well. But the HQ is our hub, and yeah, like I said, we've been in operation for just under 10 years now. We've built an absolutely outstanding network of coaches over the years that I'm personally very proud of to oversee. And in terms of my role here at ASM, it's to make sure that all of the athletes that we work with have a very healthy onboarding process to our service, that their recruitment process is healthy and it's going in the right direction. And then finally, to make sure that athletes are getting committed to the right universities with the right scholarship that suits that family and that kind of thing. So I know how complex this process is. If we've got parents or guidance counselors or athletes here tonight that, just want questions answered, they just want information, guidance, support, that's what I'm here for. That's what I love talking about. It's scholarships. That's my passion. So whatever you need, in terms of, Q&A, that kind of thing, I am here to give you as much information as possible. And there's a lot in here, so don't be afraid to ask. And I think what I'll do is sort of hand over to our lovely Michelle Marshall, who is in charge of our entire sort of Caribbean region, if you will, ensuring that athletes are getting the right opportunities, making sure they're looked after and they've got the right opportunities. And so essentially, Michelle is one of our scout directors, and she oversees, our athletes in the Caribbean predominantly. And has got a lot of really good success stories. So I'll hand over to Michelle and she can kind of take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Joe. I want to thank Joe for being here tonight and exactly what he just said. His brain is like the fountain of all knowledge when it comes to this particular process. And I also wanted to reach out and thank Darissa Appleway. I sent her a very cold email talking about our company, what it is that we do. And the reason why I reached out is because of the excellence coming out of Cayman Academy, right there in the Cayman Islands. And I also wanted to thank all the student athletes that are giving their time tonight. I mean, this one young man has already said to us, how long is this going to take? Because I've got to go to training. So I get from that we are in a good place with how important it is to get a balance between academics, athletics, and as well as information about this whole process. This informative session tonight is going to take let me see. We've always done this in the kind of way where Joe does the introduction. I'm going to do a lot of the meat and potatoes of the whole process. People got pen, paper, jot down questions along the way. It's not a problem because we're going to get to a section where all we're going to do is answer questions, because we understand that everybody's recruitment process is very, very individual. So as I said, this is part of a series of webinars that we're doing across the Caribbean. We started off in Jamaica, we did one in Trinidad, and this is the Cayman Islands time tonight, the Cayman Academy in particular. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. So as Joe said, I'm a Scout Director here, residing here in Barbados. And the reason why a lot of the successes come to ASM, because ASM is very, very concerned about making sure that we give the right type of response to people who we reach out to. There's a lot of things that we share across the Caribbean, whether or not it's cultural things, educational systems. There are people who are doing CSEC, there are people who are doing CAPE, there are people who are doing IB, there are even people who are still doing Oxford and Cambridge O-level exams and so on. But really and truly, when I speak to a family, or when a family is referred to me by some of the success stories that I already have, I always speak to the families from a Caribbean standpoint. It just so happens that I'm also British as well, half British as well. And I think that whole idea of the fact that I said earlier that I've actually visited the Cayman Islands, I actually lived and worked for 2 years in Anguilla, which is another British protectorate or British overseas territory as well. So as Joe said, ASM is based in Florida, and we work directly with about 3,500 universities spread across the NCAA. That's the National Collegiate Athletic Association of America. So spread across the NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3, the Ivy League, the NAIA, which is those private universities, that we have about 300 of them plus in America as well. And also the NJCAA, which is those junior colleges that you have spread all across America. Like Florida has, like nearly every county in Florida has a junior college, or what we call a community college. Florida has about 40 counties. So you can imagine there's some 30 plus community colleges in Florida. If you multiply that by the 52 or 53 states in America, we're talking about thousands of opportunities. And as Joe said, this is a very big process. And what we do as a company, what we excel at, is bringing the process down and actually mapping it onto you particularly. So over the last 10 years, we've done about 5,000 success stories, or 5,000 scholarships, I would say, and including over 900 last year alone. So as Joe said, the head office is in West Palm Beach, Florida. But what he didn't say is, and I always want to stress on that, is that this company is a for us, by us situation. Joe is not the only person that in head office that actually gained a sports scholarship. The majority of the people in head office all gain sports scholarships, and a huge section of them, as Joe said, not a huge, but a good percentage of them also were actually head coaches as well. And one thing I want to tell people about the Caribbean is that in like a lot of other parts of the world where you might get what we call these random people reaching out to you, saying to you, you know, we've seen you, or we've seen your results online, or we've actually been to a tournament where you've been in, and we want to scout you, we want to talk to you a little bit further about your particular experience. We have about 300 affiliate scouts that do that across the world. We don't have as many in the Caribbean. Of course, we would like to get more. And in the case of not having that reach in the Caribbean, this is the reason why we decided to take it to another level and do a one-on-one webinar like what we're doing tonight, right? So one of the first things that we do, well, after we've scouted some person, we looked at them, so person's doing really well at Carifta, or they're doing really well at CCCAAA, or they're doing very well in volleyball, I think it's called Cavoza, or whichever sport it is that you're doing really well in. The first thing that we do is that we want to do a free evaluation. There's no point in sitting in your own country and feeling pretty good about, what level of soccer you're doing, what level of swimming you're doing, what level of water polo you're doing, or whatever sport it is, and not really understand if you're good enough to be eligible to gain a scholarship. So the first thing that we want to do is to follow a proper evaluation process. That's one of the first things that we do. Yes, I will talk to you and talk to your family. I'll explain the whole process. But for us to really get together with you and for all of us to work together, there's 3 pieces of information that we need. I mean, the first piece of information is video footage. Now, video footage is king for things like basketball, volleyball, basketball, as I said before, soccer. But if you were in athletics, you're a high jumper or a long jumper, or if you're a distance runner, or let's say you're a swimmer, then your distances, your times are key. And therefore, we want to get your personal best. There must be electronically captured times, and it must be at least in a decent sanctioned meet. But if you know that you play a team sport, we need 5 to 8 minutes of collated video footage at the highest level that you've played. And yes, I do realize that COVID hit and a lot of places shut down. Joe, not in Cayman. Cayman's actually up and running again competitively and so on, right? So therefore, lost footage can be recaptured. But what I want people to know is that you're in this boat with athletes from across the world. So to come and say that you don't have any video footage at all, how are you going to be recruited, or how is a head coach going to select you and choose you if they can't see how instrumental you are going to be to their game? Our role is to say to a coach, this is who we have, this is who we are marketing, look at what they can mean to your team. And the coach is going to say, yes, I really want to talk to this person, I want to get to know this person, because this is what I really need as an impact player for my team to become even more of a winning team. And the second thing that we need after we have video footage is that we need photos of your academic school report. Now I know that there's some athletes that are not very happy with their academics, but I don't see this as being a problem because Cayman Academy, Joe, is academically one of the top schools in Cayman. So this is not going to be a problem. So whether or not it's a CSEC that you've done in the past, you've got a grade point average, or you're doing IB, or you're 14, 15 years old and what you have is a school report, I need to have a look at it so that we can actually gauge that you have enough academic qualifications or skill sets to actually go into university. And the last one is I'm going to send you an assessment form. And in that, it's actually geared to your particular sport. So you can fill it out, give me your whole athletic resume, tell me some things about why you want to go to America and what makes you unique, so that we can have a broad picture of who you are. And once you submit the video footage, the academic school report information, and you fill out the assessment form, then what I will do is submit, I'll look at it, make sure everything is kosher with it first. And then if it's good enough, I'll submit it. And people like Joe and his team, they meet 3 times a week for the ASM Internal Review Board, and they will look at it and they will make a decision, and the decision will be definitive. We will issue a 4-page report if we say, yes, we know that you are eligible to secure a scholarship. And I think this is very important for parents. I mean, you know your kid, you know that your child is gifted, you know that blood, sweat, and tears have gone into bringing them to a certain level. What you need to know is, what does that translate to? So the first thing we're going to do is say, these are the athletic divisions that we know your student athlete qualifies for. That same thing I said before: Ivy League, NCAA Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, junior college, or even CCCAA, which is junior college in California. And then very important for parents to understand is that next thing we're going to do is that we're going to issue a financial range. So we're going to say, this is the amount of money that you need as a family, starting from one figure going to another next figure, hard figures, that you will need to add to a scholarship to make it work, because we know that not everybody is a full ride scholarship winner. And parents need to have an understanding of what this is going to cost for them to get on board and saying, well, this family can afford it, everything's fine. And then we're going to add the athletic conferences. So you have a good idea of the whole range of universities that we're talking about. You can go and have a look at it, Google it on the internet. But more importantly, we're going to put some notes there as well. And those notes are going to give you some broad guidelines on why we chose to say what we said, or what's the reasoning behind our findings. But more importantly, what I would want you to do then is to book a session with me, and I will go through it step by step, fine tooth comb. This is the pathway forward to get your son or daughter from this point in the Cayman to this point at this particular type of university or college in America. Now, I went through that pretty fast, Joe, but I don't want anybody to not understand how important that is, right? Because once, yeah, go ahead. You're going to say something, Joe?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay. Now, one thing that makes ASM, and I know it makes us stand out, is that we're willing to put our reputation and to put a one-page contract to go with this assessment form. And usually assessment form reports are like 4 pages long. And we put a one-pager on that says that we as a company are absolutely 100% sure, right, that we will bring back an offer or multiple offers that fit the criteria in the assessment report. And that's like gold. So I always tell families with ASM, you're never paying for just a bunch of actions and you're not sure what's going to happen afterwards. What you're actually paying for is a result. And I think this is absolutely a game changer in this industry. To know what you're paying for, know the time frames of when it's going to happen, understand from my conversation with you clearly the steps that we're going to take, and then understand the actual finishing product. So to me, that's a win-win. So next, oh, I just had a peep in my ear. Did you hear that too, Joe?
Yeah, it's my laptop. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. So
no, I think Michelle, you make one thing I think is really important for parents to understand is everything that you've just talked about in terms of the assessment, and how we operate. Most families, I remember this was my mom when I came into this process, and years after I worked in this industry, I asked my mom, I said, what were your initial questions? She was a single parent. She didn't have a Scooby-Doo what the system was or anything, coming from North Yorkshire in England. She didn't have a clue. And, ultimately, what I've learned over the years of doing this is that parents will ask, usually they want to know 3 main things when they come into this process. They want to know, what kind of universities does my son or daughter qualify for? Sure. How much is this going to cost me? And what's the process? How are you going to get it done? Yep. Right. Those are the 3 main things that parents, want to know, or maybe it's an academy coach, their son, their athlete or whatever. And ultimately, we've sort of created a system now with this assessment process where those 3 questions that you have are going to be answered, right? So, when you look at what kind of universities, well, we're going to show you which divisions and specifically which conferences. There's no hiding there. You can see exactly which universities we're suggesting. How much we're going to provide you with a realistic budget, which tells you exactly how much we predict this is going to cost. And it's going to be conservative because we'd much rather kind of under promise and over deliver. And obviously the process is essentially our services and how we actually get it done. And that's more my role, is making sure that you're receiving offers and the strategy that I use in order to generate a scholarship offer and build leverage and negotiate and all of those different things, So that is what, although the assessment process sounds very dry and it sounds very basic, when you visit a process like this that's extremely complex, it costs money, regardless of whether you use a recruitment agency or not. It's not something to mess around with, your education, your recruitment process, the future, all that kind of stuff, and so we are purely big believers that by managing expectations and by looking at what we feel is realistic and achievable based upon what that athlete wants from a collegiate experience. And if we're not a good fit to make it happen, then we're not a good fit. And that's okay, because at least we figured that out bright and early. If we do look like we're a good fit and everything that we're suggesting makes sense to you and that's what you're happy with, great, let's get to work, let's get this ball rolling, and let's use time to our advantage. So I think that will resonate with a lot of parents, even people included in this, sort of thinking, there's three main things. What kind of universities do I qualify for? How much is it going to cost me? And what's the process? That is what people are thinking when they first sit down and start thinking about this. And they're very, very difficult questions to answer. And you cannot answer those questions until you know about all of their athletic ability, all of their academic ability, which is exactly what you said, Michelle. So,
true.
I
agree. And I think that the next thing I also wanted to say is to talk about the athlete profile. And I always tell parents that I'm talking to them is that there are two key things that we do. One thing is that marketing. I mean, the reason why you're going to come to us is because we have those entrenched relationships. We have taken the time over the last 10 years and beyond to build relationships with these schools and these different programs and these head coaches. So the first thing that you want to know is that how strong is our marketing? And then the next thing is how well we're going to manage the process, which is project management. So the first thing upon this, when you did the assessment report, we decided that we want to do business together. The first thing is that you come on board, the media team, the ASM media team kicks in immediately. They want to verify all the videos, they want to verify all the information that you've given us, because they want to create what we call an athlete profile. And normally after I've spoken to you the very first time, I'll send you what I call an after call email, and I'll send you other people's profiles that match your sport, maybe even match your position of what sport you've actually played, but they've been committed to universities as well. Or they've come from a location very similar to yours, so a Caribbean location. So you have an understanding of how it is that we want to market you. Now, it's not a static document, and I think that's a lot of what I've been seeing in the past. It's a growing document. So as you progress in your sport, let's say you're 14 and you come to us when you're 14 or 15 years old, that's fantastic, because what it does is to allow a coach to see you progress through looking at you in our profile, or maybe even getting to talk to you and to see you progress over a period of time athletically and academically. And that will be registered in your ASM profile. So that's the first thing the ASM media wants to do, is to create the framework for that, drop all your information and everything in it. It grabs people's attention and we start to market you. The placement team, so now we're not talking about the management of the process. The placement team, and that's usually Fabian's team, he's the one, and his team are the ones that are getting in there and talking to all the head coaches about you, the places that you want to target, the places that we have agreed together make sense for your journey of where you want to go, and they're starting to build that relationship. The other person now is Christoph. Christoph's in charge of every single bit of information that goes to you or from you as a family. And Joe is quite correct. This is a complex process, and it can happen over a period of years. Or I would say it's a horror, but when people come to us when they're 18 years old and they want to go to university this year, that's a bad story. If people come to us when they're 14, 15, 16 years old or 17, and they want to go over a period of time, a year or 2 or 3 years from now, it gives us the actual time to plan it properly. It gives us the actual time to tweak whatever training you're doing, whatever tournaments that you're doing, and so on, so that we can make sure that you get to your destination in the best possible framework. Because head coaches are building their sport teams 2022, 23, 24, and even beyond. And what you want to be is a known quantity to a whole broad spectrum of head coaches in schools and programs that you want to be part of, right? So that when they see you progressing over a period of time, they're saying, okay, we know that we want this person or whatever, let's just trigger this kind of funding to put to the side because we want to have them in our program. Now, we're talking scholarships that could be somewhere in the region of what, over 100,000 US dollars to what, 3,000 to 320,000. Sorry, Joe, I got fixated there in the wrong thing there just now. That's a lot of money. So if you're going to be asking a gentleman or a lady someplace in a foreign country to be, supporting you and pulling you into their team and pretty much paying you. I mean, they're not paying you by cash, but they're paying you by books, tuition, a place on their team, a chance to become a professional in your sport, a chance to actually have a fantastic education and a fantastic college experience. That's what they're paying you with. well, I would think that you would want them to see you over a longer period of time and be absolutely sure that they want you. So by the time when it comes to lay the scholarship on the table, they come with their best offer. And you're not scrambling looking for the crumbs off the table if you've come to us at the age of 18 wanting a scholarship in the same year that you've come to us. Okay? So I think that makes a lot of sense, right? And obviously when I'm one-on-one with parents, I go through the actual process of how we do that step actually by step. But what I wanted to say is that Joe, you talked about it a little bit, and I like when you talk about your own personal experience. But I always want to talk to people about when this thing goes wrong, right? What you want is the best possible scholarship that covers your tuition, your accommodation, your books, your meal plan, but also in the best part of America, on the best athletic program, on the best academic program for what it is that you want to do. And what people don't understand is that, and we in the Caribbean understand this, or other people don't understand it, that academically, we're pretty much mostly gifted in comparison to year upon year of the American system. And we need to be able to use that to our advantage. And a lot of student athletes in the Caribbean and their families think the SAT is just something that they sit to get into university. They don't realize how it correlates to a bigger scholarship. And I think that Joe will break down, and I always break down to families, that a great scholarship is made from a pocket of cash that comes from the academic side, your academic faculty, and yes, a large pocket of cash that comes from the athletic side as well. So therefore, if you're trying to get the biggest possible scholarship because you want to go to the best quality academic school or the best quality athletic program, it stands to reason that you should pay attention to this, SAT entrance exam that kids in America are focused on for 4 years. It's not like CSEC where you're focused on it for 2 years and then CAPE for 2 years. This is a whole 4 years on this exam that's 800 points for English and 800 points for math. It's not stretched across biology, geography, and all these other things. So really and truly, if you're pulling down a 1 or a 2 at CSEC and English and math, that should translate to a very, very good. Jordan should be getting above 1250 and 1280. And yesterday I had a young lady, her parents, she's a gymnast from Barbados. Her parents sent me, because they were quite sure that their daughter was going to do well in the SAT. She got 1,000. And she got a distinction in math and a 1 in English and got 1,000. So what I'm trying to say is that ASM also recognizes that across the world, not everybody is actually doing the right type of training to get the best SAT score. So we have an affiliation with a one-on-one tutoring system, which is fantastic. I mean, averaging about 110 to 150 extra points on top of what you would normally try to get on your own. I think this is very, very important. And what people don't understand is the difference in 180 points can be a difference of 38,000 US dollars worth of academic funding to add to your athletic funding. And that could be a difference of a different quality school, a different quality experience, a different quality athletic program, and it could change your whole entire life. I mean, Joe could tell you about, you could get a full ride scholarship to someplace in the backwaters of wherever and not have the same experience of having an 80 or 85% scholarship at a school with a completely different program and a chance to play in the national championships or a chance to become, go to the Olympics. So I just wanted to add that about how important that is where the SAT is concerned. People always ask me this very important thing: how important is the SAT to my eligibility to gain a scholarship? And I always say, well, you got to look at it from the head coach's point of view. Do I want some person that's struggling in math and English and maybe only got a 950 out of 1,600? Or do I want somebody that got a 1280 or a 1350 or a 1400 that's going to help me keep the cumulative GPA, grade point average of the whole team up? The person that I don't have to worry about whether or not they're doing well in school, and is going to flunk out, and therefore I've got a big gaping hole in the middle of my team. So I think that you have to recognize from the Caribbean standpoint is it isn't just about athletics. It's also about academics as well. People ask me what's the minimum qualification to actually get a scholarship in America. And if you're talking about CSECs, you have to pass 5 CSECs, including math and English. and you can use that to get into junior college. Now, there's a whole lot I can go and talk about junior college and what it means, and how it can be an easier, softer way to get into the collegiate program, how it can give you more time if you're a little bit softer on athletics to actually get your game up, get noticed by head coaches and junior coaches on American soil playing other American universities and colleges. But that's something that I prefer to do on a one-on-one basis, because not everybody is going to junior college. Some people are going straight from Cape and IB and going straight into a four-year university. What I can say about junior colleges is a place where you could do an associate's degree, which is the first 2 foundation years of a four-year degree, and then you can transfer into year 3 of a four-year degree. So in the end, after 4 years, you'll end up with a bachelor's degree that says that you were a four-year degree and an associate's degree, which is kind of magic for some people. But for other people, if you want to do medicine and you want to do, law, whatever, then you're going to do really and truly your 4 years at four-year university and pre-med or pre-law, and then bunks and then start doing medicine and law as a master's. So as I said, you can hear me already talking about so many different pathways to success. And that's the reason why this webinar is called the Pathway to Success. We need you to share the information with us so we can help build you that pathway to the success of what it is that you're trying to get out of this process. So another question that people always ask me, what is the cost of university and college in America? And that's a big question for parents. And I'm always quite surprised when people ask me that question, because I think if you want to go to America, you should know how much the whole thing costs if you don't have a scholarship. So junior college is like $15,000 to $25,000 US a year, and that includes tuition, accommodation, books, and to some extent meal plan. If you're talking about four-year university, on average it's $40,000 US a year, and it can reach up to $55,000. If you're talking Ivy League, then it's about $60,000 to $80,000 US a year. So now we understand that getting this process right can mean placing you in the right place, but also, saving a lot of money as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with, saving money. Also, there's a lot of prestige in gaining a scholarship. We had a family where the dad and the family could definitely, Joe and I know this, he could definitely afford to send his son or daughter to university and pay the way. The problem is that there's some schools in America whereby it isn't just about your money. It's about having done the right tournaments. It's about having the right academics. It's about making the right connections to get into the right schools. So in summary, I just want to say, ASM, first thing that we do is access. We give you access to working with sports professionals who know the US coaches, as I said, and the head coaches, because we want to make you an impact player on these teams. Next is the power of choice. You sit in Cayman and wait for somebody to come and scout you, or for maybe a coach to introduce you to one or two or maybe three different head coaches. Then what you've done is that there are probably 3,500 opportunities that could have been better for you. So what we want to do is to give you the widest possible choice for you to choose the best program that's the right program for you. So the power of choice. And the next thing is the pathway to a higher SAT score. I talked a little bit about what it can mean when you've got the proper SAT score to match your aspirations and dreams. And also what we do at ASM is professional guidance. Professional guidance on the athletic and academic performance level needed to secure a scholarship. So you don't just be guessing where you're going to go, and if you're good enough, you're going to know that you're good enough. And the last thing is pathway to pro. We don't talk about this a lot, Joe. I mean, there might be some people sitting here in the audience listening to us who, their dream is to play in the MLS or the ELS or to play in the Premier League in the UK or whatever, and they're trying to get a pathway to that. And that's something that ASM, obviously something we excel at. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is the guaranteed pathway to success. The fact that we are willing to assess you, and the fact that we're willing to guarantee that this is the result, given that you do these things that you said that you're going to do. And that's basically it. That's all I wanted to say.
Awesome. Literally, as you're finishing up, Michelle, we got a question in.
Okay.
That was something I was going to say as well. Please, I want this to be an opportunity for people to ask as many questions as they have.
Ask questions.
That's what I'm here for. Me and Michelle have done this for a long time. We've got an abundance of information here, and it doesn't matter how wacky the question is. Let's just fire away. So Darissa asks, is there an age limit? What I mean is, can you be too old for this opportunity? So
that's a great question.
It's a great question, and ultimately depends on a lot of different variables. Like, for example, what age becomes not really recruitable, not from an eligibility perspective, but when is a coach really not interested, and also what's possible now. In America, you've got different governing bodies that oversee college sports, okay? The NCAA being one of them behind me, the major one. NCAA Division I, for example, has much more strict rules on what the age limits are for when you enter university. And not so much when you enter university, but your high school graduation and the gap between that and enrolling in university. So to put it into perspective, to answer this in short, for certain governing bodies, there isn't an age limit. For example, in the NJCAA, in the junior college, and also at the NAIA level and the Division II level in NCAA, I have personally played at that level, and I've played with 32-year-old men when I was 19, but a coach is not going to recruit a 56-year-old man to play college soccer, right? It's not going to happen. Not that I'm being ageist or anything like that, but it's just not going to happen. So occasionally, you do get some athletes. I think probably this question is maybe geared towards somebody between 18 and 24, maybe. That's probably where I'm assuming this question is coming from. Maybe you're a year out of high school and you took a gap year and you want to come out. If you're between sort of 18 and 24, you're fine. There's plenty of opportunities here for you. What we need to do is understand your academic timeline, what you were doing away from school or away from university between high school graduation, that kind of thing. So it's more geared towards your academic timeline and learning about that, and then putting you on the right track to be eligible for 4 years of collegiate sport. So, but if your question is referring to probably somewhere between 18 to 24, you're absolutely fine. If it's more towards like 30 plus, I've seen it, but you're not really going to get recruited. It's probably too much of a mission for me. Another question. I know you said to take the academic side of this process seriously, but what about those who want to play at the pro level? What we do is work on securing you scholarships into the college system, which is obviously university. So as much as I would love to focus purely on the sports side of it and the pathway to pro, which is something that we help with in various sports, you have to take the academics seriously because you come in to get a degree. And if you don't maintain a certain academic standard at university, you won't be eligible to compete in your sport anymore, and you'll probably lose your scholarship. So, and you're given every opportunity, and you have academic counselors and advisors that look after you and make your life as a student athlete as easy as physically possible. But listen, are there athletes that use the college system to lever themselves into a professional career? Absolutely. Do they take the education that seriously? Some of them maybe not. But that's not why I would come here. I would look at this as an opportunity to fuel your education via your gift as an athlete. That's how I see this process, being as fruitful as possible. And when you have that mindset, I think you have a healthier time out here, and you don't look at the degree and the education as a job and as a chore, and you actually enjoy it, and you sort of embrace what you're learning. So I hope that answers that question.
I wanted to add something to that age question, Joe. So the question that people tend to ask me a lot is when I should start this process. In the Caribbean, people can get in their mind that they should start it when they're 17 or 18.
I mean, here's the thing with the timelines is it varies on various different sports. Some sports you need to start significantly earlier than others, and it's I don't expect everybody to know that. For example, golf, soccer, swimming, tennis, a lot
Gymnastics.
of gymnastics, a lot of those sports, you need to start a recruitment process 2 to 3 years in advance in order to give yourself a really good shot of having an abundance of offers that are fruitful offers, good scholarship packages. And there's, you've done all the steps right, to make sure that you've got a healthy recruitment process. And technically, can you start this recruitment process 6 months before you arrive in America? Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. I'll never tell anybody you can't. But will there be the amount of scholarship dollars that you need to probably make this achievable? Probably not. Is there going to be roster spots available at the universities that actually excite you and you're happy with? Probably not. So you're going to have to end up looking at rural schools in the middle of nowhere in Iowa and Idaho, and the only thing that's there is a gas station and a subway. That's what you're probably going to be left with if you start your recruitment process late. And 9 times out of 10, families come to me and say they want this, and that's not rural schools in the middle of nowhere with nothing but a gas station. So starting early isn't mandatory, but it will always give you better opportunities academically, athletically, and financially. So it's as soon as you've made the decision that the college, getting a scholarship in the US is what you'd like to aim for, that's when you should start the recruitment process. I would never expect anybody to start it unless they've made that decision. But when you have, that's when you should start, because you're only losing time and valuable time after that. We got another question.
Yes. What's the NCAA? Can you explain what's Division 1, 2, and 3, Joe? That's the question.
Of course. So basically, in America, in the college sports system, you've got 3 main governing bodies that oversee college sports in America. You've got the NCAA, which is behind me. Within that, you've got Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. Okay? They are all a part of the NCAA. It's not necessarily the different divisions, D1, D2, D3, is not necessarily a representation of the standard of education. It's not necessarily a representation of the standard of golf or soccer or tennis or whatever sport that it is. So there's various different sort of typical things that you associate with D1, D2, D3, which I can talk about in a minute. So you've got the NCAA, D1, D2, D3. Parallel to that, you've got the NAIA. So the NCAA stands for the National Collegiate Athletic Association. So D1, D2, D3. Parallel to that, you've got the NAIA, which is the National Athletic Intercollegiate Association. That basically is a governing body. It doesn't have D1, D2, D3. It's just got one division, okay? And that basically is your traditional 4-year university. They're normally privatized universities, very well looked after, very big on the balance between sports and academics, but slightly smaller campuses usually compared to big universities like...
And class size too, smaller class.
And class size, correct. Parallel to the NAIA, you've got the NJCAA, which is the National Junior College Athletic Association. That is geared towards all of your community colleges and junior colleges, which are 2-year institutions, like Michelle talked about previously, where you gain an associate's degree, and then after 2 years at that junior college, where you graduate with an associate's degree, you transfer on and complete your final 2 years of education for your bachelor's at a 4-year university, either an NAIA or an NCAA school. So, the only division out of all of that we tend to not necessarily steer away from, but we don't work with as close as the others, is NCAA Division 3. And the reason for that is they do not offer athletic scholarships regardless of how good you are. Doesn't matter if you're Cristiano Ronaldo in soccer or if you're Tiger Woods in golf, it doesn't matter. Or if you're LeBron James in basketball, you cannot get an academic scholarship at the NCAA Division III level. And like I said before, really important to understand. Let's take soccer, for example. NAIA schools are capable and do beat Division I schools. Division II schools can and will beat Division I schools. Division I schools can also beat other schools. So it's not a representation in the standard of a sport necessarily. Various different things that once I get the chance to speak with athletes, I like to explain to them. Darissa, I understand that you raised your hand. You might have a question. Go ahead if there's a question there. I will be keeping a very firm eye out for any questions. Oh, here we go. As a rugby player, how can I go about getting a scholarship for rugby? Or if not, or if it's not possible to switch to American football, get a scholarship for that. So, great question, first of all. Interestingly, as a soccer player, I came out as a soccer player, but in my final year of university, I kicked on the American football team and had that amazing experience, which was really cool. So I do have that experience playing. My colleague, Fabian, he's from England as well. He played rugby at the University of Arizona, and he's in charge of all of our rugby players. And we have an absolutely fantastic network of coaches for rugby. It is an enormously growing sport here in America. You've now got the MLR, and you've got the US sort of Rugby League Association as well, which is now taken off. And a lot of the best players that play in the MLR and these professional leagues in America now and North America have come from college rugby players. College rugby, lots of opportunity, but it's not very well funded financially. So a lot of the coaches at universities that offer rugby are very, very dependent on you qualifying for an academic scholarship. So if you are interested in getting a rugby scholarship, chances are you are probably, if you're competing at, a state, regional, academy, or even national level, you are more than likely going to be extremely highly recruitable to rugby coaches here in America. Purely because rugby domestically for Americans is not that big, and it is big all around the world apart from the US. So it's obviously coaches would love to have recruits like that have grown up with the culture of rugby and good coaching and that kind of thing. So there's huge potential for rugby. There's huge opportunity. But typically, you're going to need a significant budget to make this work. Alternatively, if that budget isn't there, you're going to need elite academic test scores in order to bring the cost down, because there's not huge amounts of rugby scholarships. The other part of your question was sort of switching to American football. That is something that does happen, but typically when you've come as a rugby player, and the American football coaches on campus have noticed your size, speed, agility, physicalities, and they've thought, wow, this person could do me a favor on my American football team. Because if they've got no pads on and they're not scared of pushing in someone like that, they can do a job for me. So I wouldn't, if you've never played the sport and you don't have very, very, very extensive video footage of you playing American football, it's very difficult to get recruited because they don't have to look very far to get recruited. So what I would say is, if that's something you're interested in, come to the US on a rugby scholarship, and then I would transition and potentially have an open tryout with American football. But it's very difficult to get recruited for American football. We have plenty of American footballers getting recruited from around the world, all over Europe, from Africa, from everywhere. So it is possible, but rugby is bigger for us. Brian Habana is an ambassador of ours. Alex Corbisiero is one of the chairs of our rugby department. He was the prop forward for England for a long time. So we've got a very good hub around us. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. But also what I wanted to say is, because soccer is very, very, we call it football. Joe, we're English and Korean people. We could just call it football, real football. Real football is
soccer now just comes out.
I know, but real football is a big thing across the Caribbean, and it's the sport I've had the most success with across the region, and especially in Barbados. I mean, there's some fantastic soccer players in Cayman, and I wanted them to understand the depth. I think there's 8, 9 different people at head office that have personally got soccer scholarships. The network that we have in soccer is just absolutely tremendous, even more so than rugby, I would say, across America.
Oh, for sure. I mean, listen, when I think back to my collegiate experience, my college coach at my junior college was Jamaican, and he recruited heavily in the Caribbean. And to this day, I mean, I've played with players. I was at Newcastle as a kid. I've played with players that are now playing, in the Premier League now. At the time, I've played with players that have been drafted into the MLS. And to this day, in terms of talent, probably the best player I ever played with was a player from Jamaica. And the talent and the skill and the grit and the determination that comes out of the Caribbean is frightening. And like Michelle said as well, is also the standard of education is so high. And so coaches love to recruit athletes from the Caribbean because they often have strong test scores, strong transcripts that are good academically. Mm-hmm. Raw athletes. They're just hungry people that want to, do damage.
Excel. Mm-hmm.
They're highly recruitable, and at the end of the day, coaches want players that are going to cause other teams problems, other universities problems. And, if it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter, any of that sort of stuff. If you are a talented player and you've got the video footage to support you, you will be recruited. Now, obviously, myself and the rest of my soccer department has a very extensive network of coaches that we're very, very proud of. We have a great reputation, and I can have an hour-long conversation with a family and an athlete and know exactly a list of schools that I would recommend that I will put them in contact with, because I've made my mistakes. A lot of the people that do this full-time with us have made their own mistakes in the recruitment process, and that's why we're a product of this industry and why we're passionate about it. So I'm much more interested in taking the time to learn about someone, what's important to them, what's driving them to do this, what's the sort of, the KPIs of that person. So I can really then focus on finding the right fit, not just the right scholarship package, or not just the right location, finding the right fit. That's the key. So, I mean, listen, if you're a soccer player and you've got the video footage to support your ability, let me take a look at it. Let's do it. Reach out to Michelle. Her contact info's there with You Can Book Me. Get an assessment process done, and I will provide a very honest assessment. And 9 times out of 10, compared to a lot of the kids in America that coaches are looking at, you're going to be much more attractive to the coaches than those. So, But another question. As a national team player for rugby, I wouldn't mind if it's possible to come on a rugby scholarship and switch. How do I get the process started? Well, awesome. First thing to do 100% is going to be to use that sort of You Can Book Me link just above. It's like 3 or 4 messages above what you've written there.
Yeah, I'll copy it again.
Copy it again. Also, Michelle, if you just want to put your email and stuff like that in there, I'm sure it's here somewhere. But
right there, email and booking link.
Okay, perfect. So I would send Michelle an email and schedule a call, and then obviously Michelle can sort of walk you through the assessment process. She can email you an assessment form. Give us as much information as possible about your rugby background, your video footage, your academics, what your family would feel comfortable contributing towards your education. And we will sit down with the rest of our rugby department, with Fabian and everybody else, and we will provide you with an assessment report, which will show you exactly what we think is possible, what kind of universities we target, exactly as Michelle explained it earlier. And if everything makes sense, we can look at our services, the costs involved, and that kind of thing. But
of course,
the first step right now is to, is to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we would target. But answer to that question is 100% arrange a phone call or send Michelle an email, and she'll guide you through the process.
That's what I'm here for. I also, Joe, wanted you to touch on athletics, which is the golden child of Caribbean sports. We don't want to forget about that. But before Joe goes on and speaks about athletics, I also wanted to mention something. Um, a conversation that happened about a week or two ago about a student athlete that was absolutely gifted. It was about wrestling. Student athlete, young wrestler out of Barbados, but he's dyslexic. And he negated speaking to me for months and months and months because he thought that because he's dyslexic, then he won't be able to gain a sports scholarship. And I told him a story about a student athlete that we had who I think he went to an NAIA university or whatever and needed, he was severely dyslexic and his issue and problems was reading, especially reading under stressful circumstances. So he got somebody to read for him the exam. And then once he was read the exam questions or whatever, I think he came out with a 3.9 GPA or something like that. So I wanted to say that in this process, I don't want people to feel that because there are any learning disabilities or any sort of challenges or whatever, that it's not something that this process can embrace. What you need to do is to actually approach me. You need to send me an email, you need to book a session with me, and we can discuss it. Because there's a path forward for every single student athlete once we understand what their challenges are, what their strengths are, and so on, then we will be very frank about whether or not there is a place or there's not a place. But Joe, I wanted you to have your little 2 cents about athletics as well. I don't want to leave that off the table. And of course, swimming.
No, absolutely. You know, ultimately the big sports for us that we work within is obviously going to be, you know, soccer, track, swimming, rugby, tennis, golf. I would say those are sort of the big 6, 7 that we do the best in. In terms of the success stories that we've produced, I would say track and soccer are up there with the biggest. You know, in fact, Fabian and Chris, our CEO, on Friday morning, they're flying to Texas to go and watch Sean in the NCAA finals. And Sean Mashwangai, he's South Africa. He's top 4 in the entirety of the NCAA for 100 meters and 200 meters right now. And he's, you know, he just ran a 9.89 in the 100 meters, which is absolutely terrifying. It was slightly wind assisted. But
I thought it was 9.98. It's a 9.89.
89.
What?
Yeah, 9 point. It was wind assisted very slightly, but still, it's a
Whoa.
Mystery. Yeah, and so I mean, listen. The beauty of track and field and athletics is a lot of it is extremely transparent. So there's really, you know, with soccer, a lot of it's going to be based on video footage and how you present yourself at that moment that you're being filmed. Whereas track and field, whatever your PBs are, we will be immediately able to look at where you fit into the college system. You know, and we will be able to show you what times or distances or jumps or throws or whatever it is you need to do in order to be this candidate, this kind of athlete, and that kind of thing. So, you know, it's very transparent. For us, it's incredibly easy to recruit because we will target coaches that need people who are going to run the times that they want. You know, I'm not going to send one of my recruits who's clearly, you know, an entire, you know, it's half a second. Okay, that's a bad example. Let's say it's swimming. I'm not going to send a recruit to a program where they are 8 seconds slower than one of the worst swimmers on that program already, because I know that there's not going to be much scholarship money for that athlete.
Yes.
Whereas I also don't want to send my athletes to programs that they're clearly going to be the best swimmer by far.
Yeah, they will be challenged.
They're not going to be challenged. They're not going to have any determination to really dig deep and improve. So, you know, and that's why the assessment process again, and having conversations and learning about what's important to you, what that kind of thing. You know, but ultimately, you know, speak to Michelle, speak to myself, find out what you should be aiming for as a track and field athlete, what your target is. And from our experience, we speak with athletes from the Caribbean that are 13, 14 years old, and they're already placeable at a lot of universities in America. They could They could run there right now.
Exactly.
You know, or they could, you know, their hurdles, or, you know, their
Exactly.
sprints, or
Yeah.
long distance. It doesn't matter. A lot of people, and obviously the Caribbean leads the world in athletics. You know,
Yes.
so,
It isn't a hard sell. And out of an island as tiny as Barbados, and we are not. The last time we had somebody in Olympic finals was probably like 20 years ago or something like that, right? But just last year alone, we had 2 young people that came to us, and both of them in the space of a week had multiple full ride offers as sprinters, both of them, a young lady and a young man from Barbados. Imagine what we could do in Jamaica, Cayman, you know, Antigua, and so on and so forth. So that's not, as Joe said, that's not a hard sell for the Caribbean. Once you've got the personal best, and we're already known to be hard workers, we're already known to be, you know, seriously high on the academics, that's an easy sell. I just wanted you to, because sometimes, you know, Joe, it's magic when you say it. When I say it, I'm obviously a Caribbean person, just tooting my own horn. But when you say it, as you know, as ASM Scholarships, #1 leading, you know, sports recruiting agency or whatever, it's different when you say it, Joe. It's different.
I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing that I'm personally proud of is, take Sean, for example, you know, who I was talking about. He's at the University of Houston. He had
Carl Lewis is his coach.
He's obviously sitting in South Africa. He's interested in working with us. We you know, he follow the assessment process. We get him signed up. This kid's a D1 full ride candidate. There's no question about that. But to us, we're like, there's, just because he's a D1 full ride, you know, doesn't mean we need to send him to the coolest schools. Now, in the end, oh God, I almost fell off my chair.
Careful.
You know, he had basically 5 full scholarship offers from University of Alabama, LSU. He had TCU, Houston, and Florida State. He visited all of these universities. These universities paid for him to come from South Africa and fly to each one. These universities, when he got to each hotel room, had goodie bags filled with all sorts of stuff for him. He was treated like royalty. Out of all of the schools that he ended up committing to was Houston. In terms of the size of the university, in terms of how cool the university is, Houston was probably the smallest and the least recognizable. But the reason why he chose Houston is because the coach is Carl Lewis. And obviously Carl Lewis is one of the best sprinters to ever live. So, you know, when you look at that, to him, we told him, I personally think for your development, because what's the ultimate goal here, Sean? It's to be the fastest human on the planet. That is ultimately his goal, is to win a gold medal at the Olympics. And that's what he's using the college system for, is to get a good education whilst getting the best facilities on the planet. That's what he's doing. Now, for him, genuinely using Carl Lewis would have been more valuable to him than, you know, the sort of the representation or anything like that. You know, that's more important than the name of the university and how big it is and the campus size and that kind of thing. So, you know, it's far more important to kind of do it that way, I think. And that's what I'm personally proud of with Sean, is looking at, you know, what's actually better for him as opposed to just how cool it looks, you know, to the university you commit to.
And that's the thing, Joe. The pathway to success means different things for different people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Well, Joe, are there any more questions that you can see from your side?
I don't see any more, no.
Okay. Well, the thing about this webinar is that everybody has my contact information. I know sometimes as a family or as a student athlete, you might not think about a question that you want to ask me or a question that you want to ask Joe, but you can always reach out to me. That's my contact information. It'll be my pleasure to answer your questions. If I can't answer your questions, Joe knows I'll bug him and ask him and get back to you with it. It's an absolute pleasure. I want to again thank Mr. Rissa Applewhite, for allowing us into your living rooms and offices and wherever you are on the island of Cayman, and for Cayman Academy to invite us to have this special informative sharing of information, I should say, session. I want to wish all of you, especially the student athletes that are doing exams starting next week, I wish all of you great results. I'm very envious and jealous about the fact that soccer and all kinds of sports are happening in Cayman, but Barbados is still on semi-lockdown for contact sports. I don't know why I put that in there, Joe. It just shows my envy and jealousy. But thank you so very much. And as I said, we are here as a resource. We're here to answer your questions about this. As Joe said, when it's done properly and smoothly, it can be, someone said they've already made an appointment and sent me an email and they're looking forward to speaking to me. Thank you so very much. It works, Joe. It works already immediately already. So unless you want to say anything else, as I said, I want to thank all of you here. There's a young man that's rushing off. I think it's the same young man that's rushing off to do his training this evening. Yeah. And I look forward to speaking to all of you in the upcoming days, maybe getting a chance to meet you as well.
Absolutely. Nothing from me. Just use this as a resource. That's what we're here for.
That's right.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for everybody's time.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.